Which is better, the Motorola Moto G Power 2022 or the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. Now, both of these devices are offered at a variety of different carriers, so definitely something to keep in mind. And in addition to that, both of these phones were launched within the last several months. Now, these two devices do have a decent amount in common, but at the same time, there are quite a few differences too, so I'm looking forward to showing you all those various differences and similarities in this video. Now, starting off with the displays with both devices. Now, at first glance, things do seem pretty similar in the sense that we do have a hole punch for the front-facing camera and a little bit of a thicker bottom bezel. But beyond that, there's quite a few differences. Now, the first difference is the actual size of the display. Now, with the Moto G Power 2022, we have a 6.5-inch display, compared to a larger 6.8-inch display with the Moto G Stylus 2022. Now, both displays are IPS LCD, and they also both feature a 90 Hz refresh rate, which is a nice premium touch that you tend not to find very often with lower-end smartphones. But another major difference is that the resolution of the Moto G Power is 720p compared to 1080p with the Moto G Stylus. So certainly, in that regard, you are going to be getting a much crisper, better looking picture with the Moto G Stylus 2022 in comparison. And also, when it comes to the PPI, we're getting a PPI of 270 with the Moto G Power 2022 compared to a PPI of 396 with the G Stylus 2022. Another difference as well is the actual aspect ratio of the displays. Now, with the Moto G Power 2022, we have a 20:9 aspect ratio compared to 20.5:9 with the G Stylus. Now, essentially what that means is that both phones do have more narrow but taller form factors when it comes to the displays, but the display with the G Stylus is even taller, which overall, having that form factor does make both of these phones very well optimized for web browsing and going on social media, because technically, with them being taller but more narrow, you won't have to scroll quite as much in your social media feeds or down a web page. Now, one final difference between these two devices when it comes to the front panels is the screen to body ratio. So with the Moto G Power 2022, the screen to body ratio is 79.7 compared to 84.6% with the Moto G Stylus 2022. And I think that mostly comes down to the bottom bezel on the G Power being a bit larger. Now, as far as the front-facing cameras go, with the Moto G Power 2022, it's 8 megapixels compared to 16 megapixels with the Moto G Stylus. Now, I have done full review videos of both of these devices here on the channel already, and in those videos, you'll see a variety of different photo and video samples. So I definitely recommend checking those out so you can get a better idea of the type of image quality to expect from the various cameras on these devices. Now, another difference is that with the Moto G Stylus 2022, we're getting double the amount of internal storage compared to the Moto G Power. So with this phone, we're getting 128 gigabytes of storage compared to 64 gigabytes. Now, both phones do support microSD card expansion, which is definitely really nice. So if you do want to offload photos and videos, for example, then you can do that with either of these two phones. Now, when it comes to the fingerprint sensors, that's another major difference between these phones, because with the G Power 2022, the fingerprint sensor is on the back of the device. Let's give the fingerprint sensor a try right now. Nice and quick, one more time. There we go. And now we'll give it a try with the G Stylus 2022. And for the G Stylus, the fingerprint sensor is actually located on the power button, which I actually prefer compared to the placement being on the back, because you're already going to be putting your finger on the power button to turn on the display anyway, so why not have it double as the fingerprint sensor? But the fingerprint sensor here with the G Stylus 2022 is very quick. I would say probably quite a bit faster than the fingerprint sensor on the G Power, and it's definitely more accurate as well. So while the fingerprint sensor on the G Power is not bad by any means, it's really good here with the G Stylus 2022. Now, both of these devices also support face unlock, so it is nice that we do have multiple methods for getting into the phones. Now, taking a look at the main camera modules on these devices, that's another area where they are different, but also similar at the same time. So they both have 50 megapixel main cameras, and they also have 2 megapixel depth sensing cameras. But that's where the similarities end. So with the G Power 2022, the third camera on here is just a 2 megapixel macro camera, whereas the Moto G Stylus 2022 has an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera that can take images at up to 118 degrees. And also what's interesting as well is that the ultra wide camera on this phone does double as a macro camera as well. So essentially you get all the functionalities of a macro camera built into the ultra wide camera on this device. So here's how things look right now through the main cameras on both phones. Then from here we can switch over to the macro modes on them and you can get very close up here and have things be in really good detail. So again, despite not having a dedicated macro camera on the Moto G Stylus 2022, it does the same exact functionality that we're getting here with a dedicated macro camera with the G Power 2022. And in many ways, the quality is actually a lot better with the G Stylus. But in addition to that, as I mentioned before, you can switch over to the ultra wide angle camera on the G Stylus, which is something that we don't have here with the G Power. So having an ultra-wide camera is certainly very nice, especially in outdoor environments. If you want to take a picture of a large building, for example, that's especially where the ultra-wide camera comes in handy. Then from here, we can flip around to the front-facing cameras on both devices, and then we can take a standard selfie, or we can also take a portrait mode selfie to get those nice blurred out backgrounds. So I do like that both phones do have a variety of different cameras available, giving us a bunch of different features. But at the same time, it is really nice that with the Moto G Stylus 2022, we do have an ultra wide angle camera. Now, when it comes to RAM and processor, that's another area where there's a lot of differences between these two phones. So with the Moto G Power 2022, we have 4 gigabytes of RAM paired up with the MediaTek Helio G37 processor. Whereas with the Moto G Stylus 2022, we have 6 gigabytes of RAM, so 2 extra gigabytes, and we have the MediaTek Helio G88. Now I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on both phones, and I'll show you the scores from that test right now, but essentially you can see here that there actually is quite a difference between these two devices when it comes to general performance. So with the Moto G Power 2022, I got a single core score of 183 and a multi-core score of 1027 compared to the Moto G Stylus 2022 that has a single core score of 369 and a multi-core score of 1324. I think the numbers definitely speak for themselves, but also from my own experience of using both phones, the G Stylus is definitely the faster phone of the two. So I'd say this is a pretty big thing to consider when getting these phones, because you're definitely gonna have a much better experience when it comes to general performance and also longevity as well if you end up going with the Moto G Stylus 2022. Now, video recording with both of these devices does max out at 1080p with the front and rear cameras. Definitely disappointing that neither of these two phones have 4K video recording, and both devices do have 5,000 milliamp hour internal batteries, so quite a bit of battery capacity there. Now, these devices have Android 11 as the current operating system that they're running. I have no idea if, when, or ever either of them are going to be getting Android 12, but if they do end up getting that update, then it probably won't be for a while. Now, neither of these phones have NFC, which is also disappointing because mobile contactless payments are more common and used now than ever before. So if you like to make mobile contactless payments, whether it's on an Android device with Samsung Pay or Google Pay, or on an iPhone with Apple Pay, you can't do any of that with either of these two phones. Another thing that these two phones don't have is stereo audio. So if you are listening to music or watching a video, for example, you're only going to be getting audio coming out of the main speaker on the bottom of either of these two phones. Whereas with other devices, including previous Moto G Power and Moto G Stylus phones, specifically the 2020 models of them, we actually had stereo audio. In addition to having audio coming out of the main speakers, we also got it out of the earpieces. So if you've been waiting for Motorola to bring stereo audio back to the G series, then I've got bad news for you, because it is not returned. And another thing that these phones are lacking, which is kind of expected but at the same time not, especially at this point in 2022, is that we don't have 5G connectivity. Now, we are beginning to see some lower end smartphones supporting 5G, such as the new Samsung Galaxy A13 5G, but unfortunately neither of these two phones will work with 5G. So you are limited at 4G LTE, which honestly over the next several years, I feel like you should be okay in the sense that the phones won't immediately stop working, so you likely won't run into issues not being able to connect to any sort of cell tower. It's going to be a long time until they phase out LTE, but But at the same time, by not having support for 5G, you are missing out on some of the newest wireless connectivity technology. Now, both of these phones are made completely out of plastic. However, the material choices are a bit different. So with the Moto G Power 2022, we have this matte plastic finish with kind of a wavy look to it. Whereas with the Moto G Stylus 2022, this is also plastic, but it's a glossy plastic kind of wavy finish. So both devices are made out of plastic. They both just take different approaches to it. In general, I'm not a fan of having glossy backs on smartphones because it picks up a lot of fingerprints, which you've probably already noticed with the G Stylus 2022. But at the same time, the G Power has also picked up some fingerprints as well. So both of these material choices do have their own benefits and drawbacks, but most importantly, I'm curious to know what you think about them. Now, taking a look at the left side of both devices, they both have the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card. Then on the right side of the two phones, we have volume up and volume down. And then on both phones, we do have the power button, but with the Moto G Stylus 2022, the power button is also the fingerprint sensor. Then up top here with the Moto G Power 2022, we have the noise canceling microphone and the 3.5mm headphone jack. And then with the Moto G Stylus 2022, all we have is a noise canceling microphone. And then on the bottom of the two phones, we have the speaker, microphone, USB-C port for charging and data transfer. And then on the bottom of the Moto G Stylus 2022, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack. And then finally, hence its name, Moto G Stylus, we do have the stylus. So I definitely like having this. I think it is a nice practical feature to have. If you want to quickly take a note, for example, you can do that. So very convenient there. I will say the stylus is not quite as useful as maybe a higher end phone like the Galaxy S22 Ultra, where the stylus just has way more sophisticated technology compared to what we're getting here. But at the same time, it's not bad, especially for a lower end device like this one. And I certainly do think it is a nice practical feature. And by having the stylus, you're really not giving up anything either, in the sense that having the stylus doesn't really make the phone thicker and it really has no drawbacks to it. So even if you don't think you're going to be using the stylus a whole lot with the phone, it's certainly not a bad thing to have at the same time. So in conclusion, which of these two phones is the better choice of the two? Now, in pretty much every way, the Moto G Stylus 2022 is the better option. So technically, if you're paying the same price for either of these two phones, I would certainly go for the G Stylus. But at the same time, carriers tend to run different deals for different phones, so it's really tough to say what you'll end up getting either of these phones for, because sometimes they'll offer a buy one get one deal, or they'll offer 50% off, or sometimes they'll even give one of these phones away for free. So it really depends on the time of year, what deals are being offered, what promotions are available, and all of that stuff. But at the same time, I think in this video, I did a decent job showing you the various differences between these two phones so that you'll hopefully have an easier time trying to decide which of the two to go for. But this concludes my comparison of the Moto G Power 2022 versus the Moto G Stylus 2022. I hope you enjoyed this video, but this is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next one.